weeks ago today, the TBI issued an Amber Alert in its ongoing search for Elizabeth Thomas, a 15-year-old who has been missing from Columbia since last Monday. We're also actively searching for Tad Cummins, a 50-year-old former teacher here in Murray County who is believed to have taken her from this area. Our search efforts remain active and ongoing, but at this point we have had no credible sightings of either individual. To date, the TBI has received more than 1,100 tips from across the country. 167 of those remain open at this point. That means law enforcement officers across the country are doing due diligence work to make sure that those leads are being tracked, to see if those sightings can be substantiated. We would still urge, 2 weeks into this, we would still urge the public, if they have any information about the relationship between these two individuals, to give us a call at 1-800-TBI-FIND. But we also want to be very clear with you. If you're driving down the road and find yourself behind that vehicle, try to do what you can to safely snap a picture and contact 911 immediately. In those types of instances, time is absolutely of the essence. We need to get local law enforcement to your location as soon as possible. So if you're behind the vehicle, that's when you call 911. Let me be very clear, the TBI remains absolutely optimistic about the outcome in this particular situation. It is not easy. It is a frustrating and difficult place to be, but it only takes one lead. It takes one tip. It takes one person seeing them, seeing the vehicle, and knowing what to do to turn this thing around. With that, Director Gwynn.
Good morning. For 2 weeks now, we've been working on this search. And this morning, I want to promise you we will keep doing everything and anything we can to bring Elizabeth home and pursue justice for Tad Cummins. Some have characterized this relationship as a romance. But this morning, I want to caution the public to avoid anything that might look or sound like victim blaming. Let me be very clear this morning. She is 15, a child. He is 50, a grown man. She's a high school freshman. He's a former teacher. This is and was not a romance. This was manipulation solely to benefit Tad Cummins. This is not a fairy tale. This is a case of kidnapping, and we remain gravely concerned for the well-being of this young girl. Right now, Elizabeth may not realize she's a victim, but she is, and the TBI stands ready and willing to work alongside our law enforcement partners to continue to do everything we can to determine where they are, rescue Elizabeth, and reunite her with her family, her friends, and her community. To Tad, let me say this. It's still not too late to do the right thing. As a self-proclaimed man of faith, you have the power right now, Tad, to answer the prayers of your family, of your community, and so many people across the country and bring Elizabeth home. To the public, I say stay alert. As Josh mentioned, if you see the vehicle with Tennessee tag 976ZPT, call 911. And if you have any information that may help bring this young girl or Tad Cummins to justice, call 1-800-TBI-FIND. Finally, I want to say to Elizabeth, we will not stop until we find you and bring you home. Your family, your friends, and your community want you safe and want you back home. We want the same thing, and we will do everything we can to make that happen as soon as possible. Thank you. General Cooper.
Thank you all for being here. I want to echo what Josh and the director have said. I believe I'm partially to blame for this initially being, the term romance being used in describing this, and it's because early on when the when it was released that there were communications, these draft emails between the two, I was asked about the content of those emails, and I would not disclose the content, and we still do not intend to disclose the content of those emails, but I was asked to describe the emails, and I used the term romantic interest. And in hindsight, I should have used a different term, probably grooming, because that's exactly what was going on. Is you had a 50-year-old educated man who was obviously trying to convince this vulnerable 15-year-old girl that being in a relationship with him was the right thing to do. And but I can't stress enough what the director just stressed. This is not a romance. There's nothing pretty about this. This is a crime, and it's a serious crime. As far as the other statements have been made, the only thing I can add is that any viewers out there, if you have friends, relatives, anyone, you know anyone that lives south of the U.S. border in Mexico or in Central America, please go to the TBI's website, copy that Amber Alert flyer, and share that with your friends and family south of the border. Law enforcement in Mexico has been notified of the Amber Alert, but we don't know how much publicity it's getting. And we need people down there to know about this, because it's possible that that's where they are. You know, Mr. Cummins planned this in such a way that he had a 24-hour head start, essentially, before the alarm was sounded and the search began. Easily enough time for him to make it to Mexico, or the Mexican border. So he may be, because he was a very religious man, very knowledgeable of the Bible, it's possible that he's playing the role of a missionary in that area. Again, these are just possibilities. We're constantly trying to think of ways where they can be and what can explain their absolute disappearance. And rural communities in places like Mexico and Central America could be somewhere where they would be. So again, I just urge you to get that word out to anyone you know that lives in that part of the world. And also I emphasize what Mr. Devine said. If you think you see them, if you're sure enough that you feel like you should call, make that call immediately. A lot of these 1,100 tips that have come in have frankly come in too late for us to get law enforcement to the location in time for them to verify whether or not it's them. And it's no one's fault. It's human nature to second guess yourself before you pick up the phone. But we ask that you do that, do it immediately, so we can get officers headed to that location immediately, hopefully in enough time that that officer can lay eyes on the people or the vehicle that you've seen. And with that, I just want to thank you all for keeping this story alive for us, because this is, the media coverage is right now is the most powerful part of our investigation. So just want to thank you for the attention you've given this case and your assistance in helping us get the word out. Thank you.
Good morning. I just want to thank you all for taking the time out to come and to keep this case fresh and keep it out to the public and across this nation. It's not a lot that I can really add to this that hasn't been said this morning, but I would like to, at this time, just thank the TBI and the FBI and all of their assistance and help with this case. Everything I believe that could be done is being done or has been done, and we're going to continue. The Maury County Sheriff's Department, the TBI, the FBI, we are committed to bringing this case to a peaceful resolution. And you know, we just want to reach out when reality sets back in to Mr. Cummins and Elizabeth that this was not a good idea, that we can't help anyone unless they reach out to law enforcement wherever they're at, or if they want to reach out to our tip line or our sheriff's department. We're ready. We stand ready to lend a hand and get them back safely. I'd like to also reach out, this hasn't been discussed, but to our to hunters and things like that. We want you to be aware of what's going on, and if you're in those secluded areas, to be aware of what's out there, and if you see something, call immediately. And we can't investigate if we don't know. And our dispatch, we continue to receive calls as well. We're following up as TBI is as well on each one of those tips. As I say, if you have information or you believe that you've seen these folks, we need you to call 911 right then, because it's a lot of a breakdown in time whenever you call the tip line or our dispatch. We need you to call the local authorities wherever you're at and get local law enforcement there as soon as possible, and that way we can have boots on the ground as quickly as possible. Also, the Cummins and the Thomas family, I speak with them daily, and I would just ask our community to stay positive and be aware of what you put out on social media, that it's two families that have been torn apart in this process, and I would just ask that our public, that we just lift those two families up. This was a poor decision on one person's part, and I just hope that in the end that he makes the correct decision. But thank you once again for you keeping this out in our public, and thank you.
I think what you've heard from all of our speakers today is that law enforcement agencies at the local, state, and federal level are doing everything we can in the name of due diligence to get this information where it needs to be. We're casting as wide a net as possible, realizing that there are a lot of possibilities here. They're off the grid, they could be south of the border, we just don't know. We don't have any specific information that leads us to believe some of those things, but we're just doing all of this in a due diligence effort to make sure that the information is as far and wide as it possibly can be. Let's open it up for a few brief questions, if we could, please. Carly?
Can you guys just reiterate, I mean, with all the technology and resources you have, to not have a single lead and for them to be hiding this long, how rare that is, and is that extra concerning for you?
Well, it is rare, but I think we have to take in consideration that this was a well thought out planned kidnapping. This was not a stranger abduction. This was not someone driving by a residence or a school and grabbing a 15-year-old and throwing them in the car and taking off. This was planned, and by a man that had a lot of intelligence. And when you have that, it's not uncommon that they can go off the radar, and it may take a while to capture that person. So in some ways, it's not uncommon when you have something that's this well thought out and as much as 24 hours head start on law enforcement.
Director, it was, you guys, of course, to see the emails and the exchanges, and we've heard sort of conflicting, there could have been, this manipulation and romance leading up to it, but then in the last 2 weeks when he lost his job and started to get desperate, was there a change in Elizabeth's reaction to him? We heard certain things that, that she was, torn between going with him, not going with him. Things changed those last 2 weeks in terms of him, in terms of contacting her. So do you feel that, maybe she didn't want to go at the end, or did decide to go?
Well, you have a 15-year-old that's being manipulated by a 50-year-old. Well, there's going to be a lot of changes there going on. She's having to leave her family and her friends. For a 15-year-old, that can be traumatic. So I think it would not be uncommon for her to have different types of changes going through a very traumatic set of events like this. So.
Along those lines, I mean, we know that the inappropriate relationship in and of itself is hurtful to this child, but do you all have any other reason to believe that he would physically hurt her in any other way?
When a 50-year-old man kidnaps a 15-year-old girl, we have reason to believe that she's in danger.
This is probably a question for General Cooper. I know the primary focus is on finding this child, but there's also been a lot of questions for the school district about whether they reacted appropriately. and took the proper actions. Are you all seeking any, charges against anyone in the school district?
At this time, my office is not looking into that situation. I know the family's retained counsel, very competent counsel, and I know that he's looking into that. And it would only constitute a crime under very limited circumstances. And once they're located, I'll be more than happy to turn my attention to that and see if there is some wrongdoing on the part of the school that my office needs to address in the way of a criminal prosecution. Put it simply, I'm just not concerned with that at this point. That's a secondary issue to my office.
General Kruger, in terms of the draft emails, I know you can't give specifics, but do we know how long they were reading through those draft emails? And can you give us just an idea of how many there were?
You can't tell anything about the time frame because they are drafts and they weren't actually sent through the internet as an email. They're not time and date stamped, so you can't put a time or a date on those. Therefore, you can't put really a time frame on when they were. All we can say for sure is we know they were sent before he was terminated from his job. Just a forensic examination of devices that were recovered after they disappeared.
This may be for TBI or the sheriff, but the people here, people in the school, the students, the teachers, presumably they would know a lot about the days leading up. Are you all getting tips from those types of people, and are you getting enough from those types of people?
We're still receiving tips leading up to this and all, but it's been nothing that has really impacted the case or anything like that. We kind of have two cases that are sort of running parallel of one another. And while I'm on that, anything that the school possibly did or didn't do, it would not have affected what we're here for today. It wouldn't have had any outcome with this. It would have been a Class A misdemeanor with what he would have been charged with. And if you take someone with no criminal history whatsoever, he would have been arrested, he would have been set a bond, and he would have most likely made that bond within hours. And so it wouldn't have necessarily had any impact on this case or the missing of Elizabeth Thomas. So we're just going to keep receiving those tips, following up with those tips. And that's another side of this. I mean, whether it was before or after, we're not aware of anyone that that Elizabeth had confided in on any plans or anything like that. But we've conducted a lot of interviews. But if there is someone that's holding out, we would definitely hope that they would understand the seriousness at this point and come forth if they have any information.
Sharon, could you elaborate a little bit more in terms of Mr. Cummins being a survivalist, that he was an experienced camper and could have had a lot of food with him? What do we know about that, and how does that concern you?
With interviewing his family, the people that are closest with him, he's been intrigued with these type of skills and all. It's not necessarily that he's that experienced other than just studying. And, of course, there's a lot of television shows and documentaries, things like that educate. It kind of gives the public our playbook a lot of times. So this, as Director Gwynn had mentioned earlier, this is a very, very well planned and executed plan to leave our community. And but he'll slip up, or hopefully he'll come back to reality that this is not a good idea. But as far as him having those skills, there's been a lot of comments that he had made apparently to people in the past that he had a skill set that no one is aware of. I think it's more of a fantasy, and but I believe he is intrigued with this. And but as far as him having that skill set, no, ma'am.
Did he have like camping equipment, and or did he go to a store? Is there video of him having gone to a store and gotten some of those things in those 2 weeks that he was plotting this escape?
All of that has been looked into and investigated, and we're not aware of any supplies that he necessarily had stocked up on. It would have been a cash purchase only, and we're not aware of that.
Along those lines, what kind of searching has been done in the county, in those, remote areas or where hunters go? What kind of search efforts have been done?
Well, I mean, of course, all local law enforcement, whether it be in the cities or the county, we patrol and of course, stay vigilant in that. And then, of course, reaching out to other jurisdictions. We've left. I've left myself. I've been in other states and all just trying to gather possibly video footage to put these two individuals together out of state for once we do get down the road that we can verify, we want this to end well, but if one comes back and one does not, we definitely want to be able to put these two folks together in a different state. Those efforts have kind of been fruitless up to this point as far as putting them together on video.
One final question for the panel, please.
Sheriff, you were talking earlier about how your investigators are working 16 to 18-hour days. Obviously, this level of momentum can't continue forever. So can you just express the urgency about how crucial every day is at this point?
Yes, ma'am. Which we're kind of a medium-sized department, but my investigators, lead investigators and all, and command staff, along with TBI and FBI, the first 9-10 days, it was not a day, I don't guess, that was less than 16 hours on up to 18 plus. And then, of course, you have other folks manning phones and things like that. And if it's a hot tip, which they've been very fruitless, there were folks that were responding to that. But there comes a time that the tips, they've slowed down as well. But there comes a time that you kind of have to get back to somewhat of a normal schedule. But we are committed, all agencies are committed to follow up on every tip and to see this through. But the longer that this goes, it definitely, I mean, our concern grows each hour, each day, and we would love to get this resolved sooner than later. And that's another side. If someone does feel that they are looking at either one of these folks or a vehicle or whatever it may be, we need you to call right then, because it's such a breakdown in time. That's as far as getting it to a tip line and then getting the local authorities out there, the fastest, most efficient way, if you believe that you're looking at Mr. Cummins or Ms. Thomas, that you call your local 911 dispatch and get local law enforcement and be the best witness that you can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. If you all would like to head on out, I appreciate it. That concludes our news conference. Just a couple of housekeeping things for the media. I want to let you know that we are right now trying to refine and hone in on our physical description of Elizabeth Thomas. Originally, law enforcement had provided to TBI and was entered into the nation's crime information database that she's 5'5". We corrected that about a week ago to she's 5 foot tall. So I want to make that very clear that all of you know we believe her to be closer to 5 foot tall. We're currently in the process right now of trying to reevaluate what her most accurate weight might be, and all of that is an effort to make sure that you have the best physical descriptors of her available. So we will, of course, tweet that out on our social media channels and all of that once we're able to nail that down. But again, 5 foot tall, not 5'5", and we are working to make sure that the weight is as accurate a representation as we can speak to at this point. Again, cannot say it enough. It only takes one tip. We've had a number of these that have gone on a number of days in the past, and it's one phone call that breaks the whole thing wide open. So we certainly appreciate your interest and your help in getting that message to the public. Any final questions for me?
Can we have the email?
No. Matthew?
So this is going to be one of the last?
Yes, I do want to let you know from TBI's perspective, this will be the last sort of big group avail that we will coordinate for the time being. We do that because we don't want to waste your time, but that doesn't mean we're any less invested in this particular case. So I don't want to keep doing news conferences and avails if we don't have a substantial amount of information to talk about, because that just wears you out and it wears out the public. We will, however, call a news conference, do interviews, and offer up plenty of information if we're able to substantiate a location or have any pictures or video that we feel are worth sharing with you. We're committed to giving those things to you as quickly as we possibly can because time is of the essence. If we're able to say they're in X location, you better believe we want you guys to know that so you can help us get that message out as quickly as possible. We're not going to play hide the ball with that kind of information.
Can you just explain to our viewers why we can't have the emails at this point?
Sure, because fundamentally there's still an active criminal investigation right now that's ongoing, not only connected to the sexual contact charge, but also now the aggravated kidnapping charge. So we have to be very careful with the information that we put out there. We spoke in general about some of the topics there, being that he had done some research centered around teen marriage and also centered around the tracking information that might be available on his vehicle. We put out some of that information to help round out the story, but when it comes to the drafts, which our agency hasn't even acknowledged publicly, that's all come from the District Attorney General. That's really speaking to the nature of the relationship that led to the criminal charges that ultimately the general will have to take through the criminal justice process.
Josh, can you talk a little bit about how the different agencies are coordinating and working together, and so one agency was considered the lead in this?
Sure. So the TBI is the clearinghouse for missing children in the state of Tennessee, and we have original jurisdiction over these types of investigations. The local agency, as I mentioned, Murray County, they have the sexual contact with a minor investigation that led to the early charge. The DA's office also plays a part. But when you have these types of Amber Alerts, it's really an all hands on deck. It's what can each agency bring to the table that helps forward the mission and gets us to the goal, which is bringing this girl home. Sure. So it was Director Mark Gwynn, spelled M-A-R-K-G-W-Y-N, District Attorney General Brent Cooper, B-R-E-N-T-C-O-O-P-E-R, and Sheriff Bucky, B-U-C-K-Y, Rowland, R-O-W-L-A-N-D. And I'm Josh Devine, J-O-S-H-D-E, capital V-I-N-E.
And the district attorney was general?
Well, in Tennessee, they're referred to as District Attorneys General.
Oh, I see. Threw me off there.
Sure. Anything else? Well, you guys have been great. Thank you so much for your continued interest. You know how to get a hold of us, tbi.media@tn.gov. Follow us on social media, etc. Thank you all.